Welcome to Plus One Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC Rich, and I'm joined by my guest, Jay Isle. Hey Jay, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Lovely to be here again.
All right. Well, Jay, since we already know that your gateway game was Apocalypse World, for folks who didn't listen to the Legacy Life Among the Ruins episode, now I need to know, what is the PBTA game you most want to get to the table and play, but haven't yet?
So, one I've been really wanting to play for quite some time now, but haven't got to the table, is The Veil.
The Veil by Fraser. That is fantastic. What got you interested in The Veil other than, Fraser Simons being such a lovely presence on the gauntlet?
So it's been in my, sort of peripheral attention as something that I wanted to try out for ages, but I recently listened to the Friends of the Table season where they play through it. And that was absolutely excellent. I think it really showcased some of the real strengths of that system. Particularly, one of the things that's quite close to my heart in PBTA games is when you get the players together and they pick playbooks and you say, all right, what's the story that these playbooks tell?
Mm-hmm.
And The Veil is really, really strong for that. That season shows that they have a very radically different story for this set of 4 PCs versus this set of 3 PCs, because the playbooks just create such a different tone and feel to it, which is really interesting.
I agree. I don't know if you saw, but Lowell Francis, longtime GM for the Gauntlet, just posted up where he is doing a tweak of The Veil, using the guts of The Veil to do a fantasy setting. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And not to mention the sort of, on top of that, there's the core system where every single time you're going to the dice, you're asking, what is my character feeling in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
What do they most sort of feel about this, which is just really exciting. It really sort of foregrounds that question.
I agree. It really puts people in their characters' heads, which is that narrative, emotional focus is the kind of game that I think PBTA does really well.
Yeah, and I've been very excited to see what happens with Inheritance as well.
Yes, that was an insta-bag for me. He definitely tripped my trigger when he was talking about a lot of the media influences for that one. So that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jay, let's jump on over here and read a sitch.
Okay.
Read a sitch. Hey, for On Read a Sitch, we talk about issues of play or a journal of play, observing things that are happening in ongoing games of PBTA. And I really want to pick your brain, Jay, about something that's near and dear to my heart, adapting licensed properties to PBTA. Now, we're not talking about taking a licensed property and designing a whole new game. We may talk about that in a little bit here. But for this particular section, I wanted to talk about stuff at the table. So the little background, every Saturday, or most every Saturday, I am running different RPGs set in the Star Wars universe. And because I do Plus One Forward and I'm kind of a PBTA maniac, I try to find as many different ways to reinterpret PBTA games to Star Wars. So this is near and dear to my heart. I really wanted to talk to you about how would you take licensed properties, things that maybe the group either does have an interest in or is only vaguely familiar with, and make a PBTA hack for that?
Yeah.
So what are some of your thoughts on that, Jay?
So the first thing I'd say is PBTA games are all about the fiction, right? They're about taking the sort of stories that whatever it is you're interested in tells and porting that across. And your number one question is, what is the fiction here?
Mm-hmm.
Like for Star Wars, that's reasonably sort of overt thing. There's, the rebels and the Empire. There's this sort of pulp feeling of adventure. There's this question of morality at the center of it. But then when you have something that's less fiction-y, or where, say for example, you want to adapt a particular video game to the table, then you've got the question of, are you adapting the story that game tells in its cutscenes and in its lore, or are you adapting the story that the game tells as you play it?
Ooh, yeah, that's interesting, because those are two really different things. So, for example, say Mass Effect might be one where the video game cutscenes might tell a different type of story than, say, waiting in an elevator for extended periods of time when you're actually in the game. That's interesting. So how do you start? Like, how I'm a GM, I'm going to run licensed property X, and you can make X whatever you wish. What's the first thing that you do? Look at the totality of the story that's being told, or look for highlighted moments, or look for particular characters? What do you think?
Yeah.
What's the best way to start?
Once you've worked out what it is that excites you about the thing, like for Mass Effect, is it the combat, or is it the sense of going to new worlds, or is it the sense of like weird alien technology or all that sort of thing? Well, I mean, if you're wanting to bring that to the table, what I would say is find a game that does that sort of thing or is close to that. For example, with Mass Effect, if you want this sort of sense of exploration of other worlds, you might look to Uncharted Worlds or something, and then try and tweak that to whatever you do. Or if you want the combat, that's something that's very sort of crunchy, very sort of bits of powers here and there. So I'd probably want to go with something like Masks for that, I think.
Oh, that's really cool. Masks in Mass Effect would be fun.
Yeah, because it's all about using your powers, and working as a team with all the people that are there. And it's a very sort of emotional game a lot of the time when you're having your big confrontations with the villains and such. Obviously, the video games don't have like a talk to Saren option in the boss fight, but that's part of the reason why you go to the table. And in fact, that's another thing I'd say, is when you're adapting something to the table, look for things that you wish you could do in the game or video or film or whatever. Look for opportunities that you wish they could take and see how you can do that.
That makes sense. Try to mechanize a way to reflect those really cool moments in the game. Yeah.
Or not even mechanize the cool moments in the game, but think... there's that old sort of video game thing of, I wish we could talk to the monsters or whatever. And in a role-playing game, you can. You can sort of set out these things. So, maybe actually, with your Mass Effect thing, you're not particularly happy that in Mass Effect, all your sort of space magic powers can only do very limited things, can, sort of push someone over or levitate them or whatever. And you want to broaden that, so you put in a freeform user power move, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like that. I had the fortune of participating in a play test that the Story Brewers folks are working on, where it's an anime-style game, sports game. They call it Above the Net. And one of the things that I found really fascinating about that is taking the idea of, in a lot of anime, you have these relationships that have a question posed to them. And the mechanics were based around trying to answer those questions. And some of the ways to answer those questions were specifically built in to reflect how particular anime would tackle those moments. And I think that's a really interesting way of, that's what I meant by maybe you custom move it when you go out into the waste. I think that Apocalypse World 2nd Edition, there's a lot of mechanization of Fury Road there. There's
definitely.
road war moves. And I think that's a great example of ways to adapt a licensed property without having to pay for the license, because it's probably not cheap.
Yeah.
I also like that PBTA is really great at exemplifying tropes in a particular style of media or a genre. And that's something that Rach is much better at pulling out than I am. But that's the kind of thing that I would do, and you talked about it before, of looking at the characters and trying to mapping them to an existing game. I normally start with, how can I do this in Apocalypse World? Because so much of the work is done for me. And you'd be surprised how many gunluggers are in our media.
Yeah.
But I think that another thing that can be a trap is that if you start off with saying, I'll just do it in Apocalypse World. Apocalypse World demands scarcity. There's an entire economy in 2nd Edition around working gigs and lifestyles that if your media... I couldn't see that in Mass Effect. I couldn't really see that so well in Star Wars. That said, Apocalypse World on Tatooine totally works.
Yeah, definitely. there's the thing that a lot of PBTA games have different core economies. Like, so Apocalypse World is where you'd go for anything about scarcity. Masks is where I think I'd go for anything about teamwork, because that's the core currency of Masks. Urban Shadows is a great one for reputation with factions as a core, as well as corruption, obviously. Yeah, so I think part of it is sort of thinking about, when you're talking about what general challenges I want people to be facing, does that line up with any of these sort of archetypes of games?
Absolutely. I think that's core, is understanding, okay, I know what the surface level of this particular PBTA game that exists is, what it's meant to look like. But is that the story that I want to tell? And I think you're really on point there, Jay, with Urban Shadows and Masks and an Apocalypse World. And if Urban Shadows, if you don't want to talk about corruption, right, you just want supernatural folks investigating things, I don't know if Urban Shadows is necessarily where you want to go, even though, hey, this is supernatural and it's modern and it's urban. So understanding not just what the playbooks do, but what does the corruption mechanic do, and does that fit the kind of story? Do you really want to advance forcing folks into going into 4 different factions every time before you advance? Is that going to be pleasurable for emulating the licensed property you have? So, okay. Anything else you wanted to share about adapting licensed properties?
I would also say that if you do have like some sort of graphic design programs available to you, one thing that's just really nice to do to get players in the mood is just take the playbooks from whatever game you do end up in and just see if you can sort of swap out some of the graphic elements on those playbooks. Obviously, this isn't something that lots of people have access to or whatever, but like if you can sort of change the font on your Apocalypse World playbooks to be a Star Warsy one or that sort of thing, can do huge amounts to get people in the mood.
I completely agree. You are on point there, Jay. I mean, yes, there is a little bit of a barrier if somebody's quote-unquote terrible at art, but I will say I have used literally paint.net, the free art program, to doctor up photos, and you can download free fonts from dafont.com. It's free. It just takes effort, and kind of like the person who goes to the karaoke bar and knows they can't sing, you just jump in and you do it anyway. And if you can get close enough, folks will be like, all right, this feels Star Warsy, or, oh, you know what, I recognize that Mass Effect font. I'm with you. I completely agree. That is a really great idea. And art pieces are an excellent way to help people understand the world that they're in. I remember Mark Causey, a good buddy of mine at Camp Nerdly, ran an Archipelago 3 version or hack for the Last of Us video game world, and he had the art book.
Oh, wow.
Right? So we spend the first 5-10 minutes and we're just poring over the art book together and having all of those visual images, and all of that in our head was so powerful for now we make characters. Now we know the world that they live in. So yeah, art pieces, touches from the particular media that you're trying to emulate. Great advice there, Jay. I really appreciate that. Now we are set up to talk about adapting licensed properties to PBTA with a more of a design focus. Jay, you want to jump on over here? I'd love to open our brains to this game you're here to talk about. Open your brain. All right, we are going to open our brains to a game that is, as of the release of this podcast, currently on Kickstarter. It is for Mythsea. So, Jay, tell me a little bit about Mythsea. What's the setting and what's this game about?
Okay, so Mythsea was a board game that was released, kickstarted last year by an Italian production company that we just loved the setting of, the art, etc. And to go into it, the big picture is it's a sort of crystal punk fantasy sort of thing. It's a world which was just completely ruined by the impact of a giant crystal meteor in prehistory. Now you've got like floating continents and weird crystals everywhere and twisted reality and monsters, etc. And it's really quite evocative in interesting ways. Like quite different from your standard fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things is these crystals that litter everything, that are changing reality, are thought reactive. So literally every person in the setting can control these with their minds, can lift them up, can move them around, all that sort of thing.
Wow.
With different amounts of skill each, of course. But it's got a really interesting sort of setting built on a society that is changed by this technology.
Okay.
So that's the big picture. But what we're making is Mythsea Legends of the Borderlands, which is focusing in on a specific part of the setting, which is a great war between two of the great powers, one of which that you play in the board game. So, our backstory is, there's these two powers at war, and one has just ousted the other from a city that had recently been taken over by the first. You play various factions within this city. You get to define the city, its buildings, its districts, its inhabitants, its culture, and see how it rebuilds, how it recovers from the scars of occupation and war, and how the different factions, some of which are from some of these great powers, some of which are local, how they change and how they evolve over the decades or so afterwards.
Okay, cool. So I'm curious, so I'm going to jump in here. When you build your side, do you have kind of a guided set of questions? Is that something that is more freeform? How do you do that?
Yeah, so this game is built on Legacy to some degree. So you will have in front of you a house playbook, which defines your faction, and a character playbook that is who your hero is. And as you're building your house, you will answer all sorts of questions, like the first question you normally answer is, how did the war affect this city in a way that's relevant to your particular group? So, like, for example, the faction that's all about researching magic and these crystals, they get to decide if the force that occupied the city was high-tech, extremely low-tech, doing all sorts of weird experiments, that sort of thing.
Fun. Okay, that's cool. And is it a thing where you own that answer, or is it collaborative along the table?
You own that answer.
Nice.
So
Cool.
everyone gets to decide one facet of the whole situation, which is really cool. And then once you've done your sort of starting questions, decided who you all are, there's a collaborative city building process where, like, everyone goes around the table and picks out a particular landmark, places it either in the city or in the area around it, and gives it a particular role in the story, at least to begin with. So you'll put it as either a haven for your faction, so your sort of home base, a scar of the war, so you decide what it used to be and why it's no longer that, a danger that's going to be causing trouble going on, or a refuge of one of the old factions in the city, an NPC group that's going to be sort of involved in this starting story.
I really love those collaborative world building ideas, and it sounds like Mythsea is this nice kind of backdrop, but there's a lot of flexibility within each, like every Mythsea game sounds like it would be pretty different from the others because there's so much world building going on there, right?
Yeah. You have one of the nice things, one of the things I've been really appreciating with the people we got the license from, is that they've basically given us this section of the setting and just said we can go nuts with it, basically. We can say whatever cities are there that we like. We can say anything we like about this other empire that's been fought, that's at war with the other kingdom. So we could say all sorts of things about that, but we decided to put that in the hands of the players and give them tools to make that decision at the table.
That's pretty exciting. So you've mentioned that you're using a bit of Legacy Life Among the Ruins there, some of the learnings there. What mechanics are different in this game versus, let's just start with Apocalypse World. We'll assume folks haven't picked up Legacy Life Among the Ruins, which is sad for them. But let's say, what would you say are the things, person coming from Apocalypse World, what would you make sure they know about as they come into Mythsea?
Well, the big thing is one I've already mentioned, that you have a faction playbook alongside a character playbook. And this doesn't quite work like something like, let's say, Spirit of 77, where the two halves slot together to make a complete character. Mm-hmm. Instead, they're different modes that you're in sometimes. So sometimes you're a character having, adventures on the at the ground level. But sometimes you'll zoom out and say, all right, all our factions now have a few months to pursue their agenda across the city, and they're going to take actions themselves. So you when that happens, you put away your hero playbook, pull out your house playbook, and work on that instead. And house moves do very broad strokes things. They sort of share the GM role somewhat. So you can do things like discover new threats out there in the world, place down new opportunities on the map, conduct negotiations with the factions and bring new sort of story threads into the game, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But you're limited in how long you can spend in this phase because houses are quite slow, cumbersome creatures. And so after a while you spend in this phase, you go back to the hero phase and have adventures there, discover the truth of the setting from a ground's eye view, experience changes in philosophy and beliefs so that those inform your house when you come back to the old view.
And how long does a house phase normally last? It's my house turn. Am I playing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Is there a limit?
It depends on the group. So when you go into the house phase, you decide collectively how long you want to spend here.
Oh, okay.
And that's basically tracked by how many actions that you can take in it. It's a bit like Blades in the Dark downtime actions. You start with a default of 2, but you might have more if you're having a particularly long downtime or that sort of thing. So it's not a sort of throwaway part of the game. You will be spending, maybe, in a 2-hour session, half an hour in the house phase, I'd say.
Okay.
Just on average.
Yeah, that's good. I like that ratio. What else is different about Mythsea?
Another thing is that, as well as that sort of zoomed out spatial sense, it encourages quite a zoomed out, zoom in, zoom out sense of time. So the game is broken up into flashpoints, which are key moments in the city's history. So obviously the first one is when all these factions arrive after the war and decide what's going on. But then you might zoom out again, move forwards a couple of years and say, all right, now another big thing has happened. Maybe there's a plague spreading through one of the districts, or a army division has arrived and demands that we give them supplies, or that sort of thing. And there are procedures that you go through to say how each of your houses has changed in that time, how the city has changed. But importantly, each flashpoint makes a big impact on the setting. One of the ways we do that is when you move from one to the next, you always put down a festival that the city has added to its cultural life to celebrate or mourn or just remember what happened in the last one.
I love that. That is such a great milestone marker.
And these festivals are kind of custom moves each in some ways. So at any point during a later flashpoint, one group can say, all right, we're celebrating this festival. It's time for this festival, we've decided. And then they work through what happens as a result of that. And once they've celebrated it, obviously it won't be celebrated again because it only comes around once a year or whatever.
Fun.
So, for example, if there was, a plague spreading through a district and that led to a festival of mourning, they might say, all right, we're going to do this and it is time for this. And that means that we sort of consult the echoes of dead ancestors and learn something from them. Or maybe it means that we're just sort of brought together by collective grieving, or whatever you've decided as a group that festival means.
That is some neat piece of world building that evolves through play. I really dig that. Are there any other highlights, kind of mechanical tweaks or interesting bits that you might want to point out?
So one thing I'm pretty proud of is our covenant system, which is your sort of standard PBTA inter-character bond sort of thing. Except that it has a few nice little tweaks on it. For one thing, you can always choose to sub in. Well, each bond has a theme around it. So maybe me and the player to my right or whatever have a theme that's based around prison because we were both in prison together or that sort of thing. Or, well, it's actually each one is made of 2 of these things because I pick one and they pick one. So I might have prison and they have war. So we were prisoners of war together.
Okay.
And then whenever that's relevant, you can, for example, use the bonds rating instead of a stat. for a move that you're rolling.
That is cool.
And that has the chance of weakening the bond or possibly strengthening it as you sort of test it, put it to the test.
I like that. There are a number of PBTA games that use a bond or HX, and while some of them do evolve and change, they're always very abstract. This sounds like a really interesting evolution of that mechanic, and I like the idea of having a theme around it too, so that you can change the statements of we were both prisoners of war, or we were both prisoners of war, and it can change. That's cool.
So that's something that will evolve between flashpoints as well. Like one of the things that you do between them is change some of the theme of a bond, and that theme is particularly important because when the bond maxes out at +3, and you would raise it higher, like in Apocalypse World, you'd loop round to the start and get an XP. Well, in this, what happens is you say something about the current situation in the bond, say some prophecy about what's going to happen in the future, and then your bond partner adds a sort of caveat to that, picking from a list. And that's true now.
Wow. Yay, best friends do ruin the world. I like it.
Exactly. This is definitely a world where bonds between people matter in a sort of deep metaphysical level.
That's cool. I love that because you talked earlier about how a person's mental state can affect the setting around them, the crystals around them. So their bonds shaping the world. It's such a neat mirror of that. That's cool. All right, Jay, I have to know, what is your favorite move in Mythsea and why?
What I'd go with is our wield move, which is the move for controlling these crystals, for tapping into them with your mind and doing great feats of telekinesis. One of the reasons I like this is that it's a quite nice sort of freeform power. We've set out some guidelines of what you can do at a basic level. Every character, for example, during character creation picks up a focus, which is a particular way in which they're better at this than other people. So it might be that they can lift more than most people, or they can do it more precisely than most people, or do it for longer, or that sort of thing. But at basic basis, it's quite simple. Like, you can augment your actions a bit. You can do things like, if you were building something, you could build a bit faster if you're using telekinesis to shape the rocks and crystals. Where it gets interesting is where you start adding more of these focuses in. And you can only do that if you've got a friend who has one of those focuses and they're actively helping you.
Really? That's very cool.
So the more people that you have helping each other as a result of these covenants, the more powerful the collective group action can be. So, as you're adding more and more people to the mix, not only are you getting, both precise and potent or whatever, but you're also unlocking extra tiers of effects. At higher levels, maybe you can perform superheroic feats. Maybe you can sort of lift yourself and fly super fast somewhere or whatever. Or even at high levels, maybe things like you can warp reality around you, or you can instill a mind into a piece of crystal such that it now has a will and can take action of its own.
Wow. Okay, I can see why you like wield. That is really...
Yeah.
That's fun. I like that it has some structure, but it's not hard-coded. That's really cool.
Another nice thing is when you plot out a feat that you want to do, when you negotiate that at the table and then do it, you'll do that on a hit. Any sort of 7+, you do the thing that you wanted to do. And what the 7-9 or 10+ does is says what the cost is.
Ah, I like that. So, yeah, hit, you do it. But on a 7-9, there's a significant cost. Those are fun, right? Because calling a 7-9 a hit, but whenever I've seen some moves that are constructed where the 7-9 is kind of like feels like a hard move.
Yeah, a lot of the time the 7-9 is like, you almost do it, or
exactly.
Just try it again, and you'll be all right. But yeah, I like having that feel like it's sort of a potent magical thing, like that it can't be contained, No matter how much skill you have, there'll always be some bleed over, some effect on the world around you. And it's not that you're like not good at this, it's not that you're sort of clumsy, it's that it's magic. And
yeah, that reminds me of the way
something alive.
magic was viewed by the Dragarians in the Vlad Taltosh novel. So I'm right with you on that. That's really cool. Okay, Jay, you've got me pretty excited about this. Is it possible that we could jump over to Act Under Fire and give the Mythsea a little shot?
Let's do it.
It is time to act under fire.
All right. So in Act Under Fire, we do a little bit of actual play, so you get a taste of the game. And Jay, in her imminent magical wisdom, has created, this is like a little twine game type deal?
Yes, exactly.
Reminds me of the Legacy. It is. I love the background. This is so pretty. Everyone be jealous that I get this lovely treat. All right. How do you want to do this? You want me to read out this stuff, or do you want to narrate?
I'll narrate.
All right.
Once this city was free. When the Empire seized it, they sparked war with the other great power on this continent. Now the Empire's been ousted, and you've arrived. So what brought you to this city?
My options are a chance to learn the Empire's secrets, a mission to protect the kingdom's newest outpost, or humanitarian relief for the city's residents and the war's refugees. I am terrible at mystery, so I'm going to go with a mission to protect the kingdom's newest outpost.
Okay. So that means that you're a division of the Guild of Keitur, the Fist of the King.
Nice.
You don't normally involve yourselves in political squabbles, but, your peers know to stay out of the way when you do. You're a hero in Keitur. What role do you play there?
Oh, well, we have a harsh enforcer or a squad leader. I think I'm going to go with squad leader. Maybe we can have an interesting squad we form up here. All right, so I'm a squad leader.
As for you, what unique skills do you draw on? Are you stealthy? Do you know a lot of history and folklore? Are you stoic and great at enduring calm?
Ooh, stealth and guile sounds fun. I'm going to go for that.
Okay.
All right, so I have Plussy, the squad leader of Keitur, with Force 0, Prowess +1, Cunning +1, and Wisdom -1. Okay, I'm playing the character. It checks out.
Yep.
It looks like we've got a relic that's a crystalline dagger.
Yes.
Very cool.
So that's what you use to channel the control of crystals through. Who did you take it from?
Azellan. His name was Azellan. I took it from him after we fought a pretty titanic battle when I first arrived in the city.
Okay. So was he a local or a remnant of the invading empire?
A remnant of the invading empire. He was a gang leader, as it were. And when we arrived, he told us to buzz off, and I said, no, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Alongside the rest of your gear, you have scout's leathers, a scoped crossbow, a loyal war beast, and a group of army healers. Because you've been sent in to protect this place and keep its people healthy.
Very cool.
So, what is this group that you have following you?
Well, since my skill set is around stealth and guile, I think that the group I have with me are kind of an advanced scouting group. So we are quick, light on our feet. We're here to effectively move within the city. There aren't a whole lot of heavy arms, and a lot of times we're stripping off our identifying marks to mix among the populace and try to find out what is really going on.
Excellent. So because you're a squad leader, you have a covenant with your squad, which you can expend to act based on your memory with them, your relationship with them. So that's cool. All right, so you've been sent into the city, into Montara, to look for danger, to look for signs that your division will have to deal with when they arrive. And at the moment, things are quiet, strangely quiet. The Empire's forces retreated as yours approached. They didn't want a costly block-by-block battle over this place. But you can tell that this place, there's a sort of pall hanging over it. When Plussy is sort of circulating through the inhabitants of Montara, what are they looking for? What are you looking for?
Well, the pall, of course, will have an overall effect, and because of this world of Mythsea, the their emotions will affect the environment. So that's doubly worrying. I think I would look for a place where people might share their sorrows. So if there is perhaps a pub of some kind, or if there is some kind of wailing wall or area where they let down their cloaks and share their emotions. That's where I'm looking. I want to find the truth of what's causing their problems.
Okay, excellent. So I'll say you can find a monument in a sort of open square, and it's quite an ancient one. It looks like it's formed in the shape of a giant hand reaching towards the sky, but quite crudely carved. And as you enter there, you can hear the sounds of people in anguish and grief, and you can tell this monument has got a new function recently, because it is daubed with markers of people's names all around the sort of base of it. And looking at it, you can see that there's people all around. It's quite a wide hand. There are people sort of crouched painting new names on the monument. Other people sort of anxiously scanning the names.
I have a number of my squad here, all of us, in the clothing that we were able to find that would help us to mask our militaristic bearing. I'll move up towards the hand and stand near someone, and if anyone looks over to acknowledge my presence and doesn't seem hostile, I might engage them in conversation.
Okay, cool. So there's someone who, a old woman, it looks like, in a cloak, is sat on a low wall nearby, just sort of staring at the monument. She's occasionally drinking from a gourd, it looks like. You can smell some alcohol in the area, but as you sort of stand nearby, she looks up at you and reaches the gourd out to you.
I take it and thank you. Tip a little bit back and take a swig. Whose names are upon the hand for you?
She looks up. My daughter and her son. She fought the Empire when they came in, and she couldn't stand against them. But my son, that paint is fresh.
What happened?
He went missing. I don't know where he is, but he's been gone days now. That's what the wall is the missing, you know? There's so many missing that we couldn't just have one for the dead. What about you? Do you have anyone lost?
I am new to the city and trying to learn its ways. I stop, and then I'll walk forward and actually look.
Interesting. See if there are any names that you know.
See if there are any names I know, correct.
Do you want to give me a wisdom roll for unearthing?
I do. I'll roll a couple dice here. I have rolled a 7, and my character's wisdom, if you recall, not great, at a -1. So that takes me to a 6.
Okay. So you're staring over the list, and yeah, I think you do spot a name that resonates with you. It's a name that... So you're in something of a sort of advanced corps, you know? You're used to operating kind of behind enemy lines, and obviously there's a bit of espionage in there as well. And there is a name there that you have been taught to use as a sort of communication, as a sign. Like if someone speaks this name or points this name, it's a call sign. And what it means is there is danger here. There's specifically of the sort of reality warping, emotion warping, monstrous sort.
Allura. I stepped back to the woman. I knew Allura. I'll point to the towards the finger where I saw the name written.
They say we're free now, but I don't feel free. Have you been by the temple recently? I know you're new.
I've not. What should I expect at the temple?
It's not what it used to be. There's something strange there. They did something to it. They killed the priest. I don't know what they did to him, but there wasn't any blood left in him.
Who are they? Are we speaking of Ezalon, that gang leader, or someone else?
You know him?
I met him.
Yes, some sort of awful... My grandson was dealing with him before, was getting into trouble with him.
He shouldn't cause you any more trouble. Our meeting didn't go well for him.
Well, good for you. But could you just do one final thing then?
Of course.
Could you go and look in the temple for me? Just put my mind to rest. Tell me that there's nothing going on there. Nothing wrong.
Reach down and squeeze her shoulder affectionately and then nod. Yes, I will go.
Okay.
I and my friends, we will see what we can see.
All right.
Meet the eyes of my squad and we leave this hand of sadness to head for the temple.
All right. So as you get closer, that feeling that you had felt upon entering the city gets stronger and stronger, a feel of quiet and sadness and just nothingness, of silence. And you feel like maybe it's the sort of thing where if you've been here as it's sort of been gradually ramping up, you wouldn't notice, or it would have sort of dulled you to not notice. But it's almost sort of a cloying thing in the air around that temple.
Does it feel as if this temple is the source of the sadness, or is it a stronger victim?
Let me think what this can do. Actually, one of the things that you can do is you can draw on your covenants to understand an arcane mystery or empathize with an inhuman creature.
This move seems appropriate.
Yeah. So you essentially burn that point of covenant as your relationship basically suffers as you commune with the inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
Yeah, so you can declare a fact about the mystery's nature or intentions.
I will declare the fact that this temple is in fact the source of the pall that we felt when we first came here, and there is a poison within it that is infecting the minds and the emotions of the populace and causing folks to become lost in it.
Okay. So I'll say how you find that out is you look closely, you sort of get your people to scout, to watch for people coming as you look into the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, you're trying to sort of put yourself into the mindset that of this sort of emotional aura. You're trying to sort of channel it, and you can almost perceive it, and it is suffusing this temple, but gets stronger as you look upwards. And there you see, in the ceiling, there is a body pinned there by a lance of pinkish purple crystal, and it is radiating this feeling, this ambience.
I would point this out to my squad, and we are making our way to remove that body. That could be what is befouling all of this place.
Okay. What's your goal? To get up there? To climb up?
Yeah, I want to climb up there, yes.
All right. So you can sort of pick your way up the side of the walls. You're quite a nimble, agile person. You should be fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no sort of gantry leading up to there. It's sort of right in the centre of the ceiling, and you can see that this lance has sort of lodged in the rock.
Is it possible that I take my scoped crossbow and maybe attach a small rope and try to shoot a bolt up in there with a rope attached and try to climb up?
Yeah, that sounds fine by me. I think that's quite a sort of skillful thing. So do you want to give me a prowess roll to see how well you do for that?
I sure do. Oh, that's pretty great. I've rolled a 10 plus 1 for my prowess is an 11.
Okay, so the crossbow bolt buries right next to the body. You have a rope that you can sort of get one of your fellows to attach to a piton in the temple wall and start clambering up there. As you get closer, you can see sort of almost the colours of the crystal refracting the light in almost hypnotising patterns. You can feel the field getting stronger and stronger, and you can almost start to hear echoes of cries of anguish, like what you found at the monument, but a single voice crying eternally with a sort of reverberation, like it's reflecting inside a tiny room.
Wow. Okay. That's terrifying.
But you're next to the body, which is sort of hanging limply as this from this crystal that's impaling it through their chest. At this point, you can see they are a sort of late teens, male, ragged clothes.
Despite myself, I'll reach out and just gently touch the body to see if it reacts, if it's part of this oddness.
The body doesn't react, but the crystal does. There is a sort of shifting of shapes within it. Like it looks like sort of light on the bottom of a swimming pool, you know, with the sort of shifting patterns and light. But that's starts rippling the light in a sort of pulsing manner. And you can just feel this sense of anguish and dread now. The aura is turning from one of just sort of silence and hopelessness to one of active dread. And you have to sort of work to push your way through it.
I think that I need to remove this lance from the body. It seems unnatural. I'm going to reach down and take hold of that crystal lance and...
Well, remember that you don't need to touch it to move it.
Ah, that's true. And plus he would know that.
Yes.
I think holding himself on the rope close enough to be able to reach out, he reaches a hand out, fingers splayed, and tries to will the lance to remove itself from the ceiling.
So you've got a precise tag thanks to your crystal dagger, which means that you can do this very with the dexterity of your main hand, which is excellent.
Ooh,
so
nice.
You sort of send your thoughts through that dagger and into this crystal and try and wield it. So roll plus wisdom.
All right, I suck at wisdom. Here we go. And I have rolled a 7. Minus 1 makes it again a 6.
Okay. So I will say that your mind reaches out and touches the crystal. And one of the things is when you've attuned to a crystal, no one else can wield it. So, for example, your dagger. And your mind reaches out and tries to grab this crystal, and it's attuned. Someone is controlling it. Someone is attuned to it. And the backlash sort of strikes your mind. So I would like you to take 2 points of harm.
Ouch! The harm in this game are fairly so.
So you mark off two of the options.
Okay, so I go to cut off to pinned, right?
Well, you can pick whichever ones you want.
Oh, fun! Cool. So I kind of like the idea of it being a... Ooh, I can pick off any two I like. Sorry. I think I'm going to be cut off from my squad.
Yeah.
And it causes me to fall from this great height, and I end up broken.
Okay. So you fall. Your squad are sort of up there on the wall or outside watching the temple, so they can't help you. And you land on your back, and there's a crack as your shoulder breaks. And you somehow managed to loosen the crystal a bit as you were doing so, as you were falling, and the crystal and the impaled body fall to the floor, and then actually not entirely to the floor, just a few meters above the floor, the body halts in midair, and then sort of rotates upwards so that the body is standing upright. Not standing because it's not touching the floor, but that crystal is in the center of it, and it's like the crystal is the fulcrum for all the movement, and then starts moving towards you with the sort of body's limbs just sort of flopping as it gently glides through the air towards you.
Yeah, I think I see this move called heroism is optional that I happen to have.
Excellent.
When you take advantage of an opening to escape a situation, roll plus prowess. I'd like to activate that move now, please.
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Come on, dice. Oh, I rolled a mere 6, but let me double check my prowess.
It should do it.
It is a +1, so this is 7.
All right, so pick 2 options there.
Okay. I think that I leave something important behind, and I owe someone for my escape.
Okay, excellent. So, I will say that you sort of pick yourself up, wincing from the pain, and just sort of put your head down and run to the door to this temple. And as you're running there, you can feel that sort of ambience behind you getting closer and closer. And then there's a thunk as the door to the temple just shuts with a real sort of clap. And you look around and there's that old woman from the monument reaching out a hand herself and closing the crystal-lined doors. And she sort of raises an eyebrow at you. But you are out of there, but you left your squad behind.
Oh, man. Oh.
In the sealed temple.
Crap. I left the whole squad behind. I'm the worst leader. That was terrifying. I could hear the humming of the crystal as Plessy ran away. Jay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to play Mythsea. This is a really, really interesting game. Now, how long is the Kickstarter up for?
I think it's up till April the 12th.
April the 12th. All right. Well, this will be up in well enough time for folks to give it a listen, and the link to that Kickstarter will be in the show notes. Any last bits you wanted to mention about the Kickstarter before we go?
I'll just say that the basic moves and all the playbooks, as well as city building idea cards, etc., are all freely available in a Kickstarter update. So if you like what you've heard today, go and download it and see what you think. There's also a quick start on DriveThruRPG, which has pre-generated characters and a starting situation to run people through, if that's more your jam.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming on and sharing with us Mythsea.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Drowning Attitude. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Hi listeners, I want to tell you about the Gauntlet Patreon. The Gauntlet is one of the most active, vibrant communities in tabletop role-playing games. We produce podcasts, the Codex Zine, Gauntlet Hangouts, Gauntlet Con, and more. If you love small press, independent tabletop role-playing games, the Gauntlet is for you. And you can help keep things going by pledging to our Patreon. This year we have 4 different pledge levels for you to join at, each of which comes with a number of benefits. At the $2 level, you get early access to our actual play podcasts, including pocket-sized play, as well as a special Keeper of the Gauntlet title. At the $5 level, you also get a PDF of our monthly zine, Codex. Your name and Keeper of the Gauntlet title is listed in the back of each issue of Codex while your pledge is active. At the $6 level, you also get access to the Gauntlet Slack group, which is the heart of our community. And at the $8 level, you get early RSVP access to new game events on Gauntlet Hangouts. The $8 spots are limited based off how many early access players we think the Gauntlet Hangouts calendar can support. Every month on the 15th, we will make a small number of new $8 spots available. So if you want to play games with the Gauntlet, make sure you keep an eye on our Patreon page around that time so you can grab one of those rare spots. Finally, every member of the Gauntlet Patreon, no matter the level they pledge at, gets to attend GauntletCon each year for free. GauntletCon is our incredible online gaming convention with over 200 game events and panels, competitions and prizes, and our bumpin' GauntletCon Discord server. Folks, we can't do all this awesome stuff without you, so go check out our page and please consider pledging. We're at patreon.com/gauntlet. Thanks.